Hey there, this is Ryan on episode 13 of No Code, No Problem with a special guest, Bram, the creator of No Code MVP. Today's episode is brought to you by Adello. Adello is a powerful no-code tool that you can use to build mobile and web apps in minutes. I featured Adello on episode 2 before they were a sponsor, and I would recommend you check them out at Adello.com. The link will be in the description. So I have Bram on today's episode. Say hello.
What's up? Hey man, what's up? Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bram's working on some really cool stuff. Um, it's called No Code MVP, which he's building a course for people to learn how to use no code tools, and he also has like a business side. But we'll get into all that. But first, I wanted to focus on his entrepreneurial journey. So a few years ago, he started a company called Startup Stash, which he sold. So if you can tell us a little bit about that and your journey with that, and kind of how that led you to now work on No Code MVP.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I told this story many times in other places, but I'll keep it short. So I think in 2013 I was working at this small investor. I was like the fourth guy on the team, and at that time I found Product Hunt. So I started posting stuff, or well, I got access to Product Hunt after stalking Ryan Hoover for like 2 weeks and asking him like, hey, I'm in Europe and I think I know about some cool new stuff, and can you let me in? So he finally let me in, and I was able to post new things. And then in the first few weeks, like I got a lot of top hunts, so like products that ended up as the number one for that day. And so I was in touch with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs that were starting out, talking about their product and their product hunt experience. And at one point I thought, okay, well, maybe I should build something myself. And so my work at the investor was focused on product development and like business strategy for the startups in the portfolio. And so that's also really what I think I'm good at. So let's say like the first 2 years of a startup. So whose problem are you solving? How are you going to solve that? What are you going to build? How are you going to market? Like all these first questions. So at one point I thought, okay, I think I know how to come up with an idea, build this first product, and then launch it in the right way. So that was my new goal, or a nice fun project. And that's what eventually became Startup Stash. So I combined a list of bookmarks that I had of interesting tools and resources and blog posts and videos that I saved or bookmarked for the startups that I was working with my job. And I combined that with like an old school directory page and turned that into a resources stash, so to say, of 400 resources and tools. And that, blew up through Product Hunt initially, and then it went viral, and eventually it was used by about 800,000 people. And that was kind of like how it started. And the fun thing was that I think within, 3 hours of launching it on Product Hunt, I already met my personal goal. Like I found people that liked and saw value in what I created, and basically everything after those first like 2 or 3 hours was all bonus. And so I saw the interest, and then I tried to create like a side project or a small business out of. So I ran it for almost 2.5 years, with like 3 to 5K or something a month. So that was nice, and eventually there were other things on my path. So I ended up selling it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's the real short story. No, but I mean, what is fun and what I'm also seeing now with this course, I mean, a course is obviously not like going to be a super big or unicorn company, or well, maybe this one will. But what's been awesome to see is that, if you create something and put it out there will be people that enjoy what you made, and some people will even pay for it, and that's already a lot of work, right? To turn something that's in your head into something tangible that you can show or give or sell to people. And that's well, when that happened, so yesterday I made some sales, and also before yesterday when I launched the course, that's just step one. Now the real work begins. Like, can you make this bigger? Can you make it better? Can you make it sustainable? And so that's what really interests me, to see if I can do that again, hopefully.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. With the website for or for the startup stash, did you build it with no code tools?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I had like basic HTML, CSS, and PHP like lessons in college. So I know the basics, but definitely far away from from being a developer. So first thing I did when I got the idea for Startup Stash was, so I knew how WordPress websites looked, and at that time you had some like hosting, like providers that you could use to have like a one-click WordPress install. So I found one that didn't make me like go through all the manual steps to install a WordPress page. And then so that was step one, finding a place where I could host a website. And then step two was finding a team that would fit what I was trying to create. And that was a bit of a search, because I knew it was a directory, but when I searched for like directory teams of WordPress, like I found these restaurant teams and like teams that were totally not in the content space. So I ended up buying a restaurant type of team. I know what it's called. It's called Metro Deer, like a Metro directory. It doesn't exist anymore, but I bought it. I think it was like $50, and then I just edited it with my basic skills. And edited is a nice word for ruined, I think. So I just like inspected in the page in Chrome like all the elements that I didn't want to have. Then I went into the code and then just hard code deleted all these pieces of the website that I didn't want to use, and that's what eventually became the website, with some help here and there of technical friends, just to make sure that I didn't mess up completely. But yeah, that was basically my first the first iteration of that website, and eventually it stayed like that, and it also scaled to like 30K visitors a month, which held up pretty well. So that's also like one lesson that I got from that Startup Stash journey, is that if you create a first product, or a product that you launch, and if that product delivers value, so for Startup Stash I did all the curation beforehand, and I showed like my top 10 suggestions for each of the 40 categories. And that was the value that people were looking for, like finding this curated info in the haystack of dozens or maybe even hundreds of tools that you could use as a startup. And they didn't care that they didn't care that the website was just 40 orange square blocks with no icons or imagery or whatever. And so that really taught me that it doesn't really matter what your first product looks like. It just has to work and deliver the value that your users are looking for.
Yeah, that's definitely a good lesson for sure. So getting into it now with No Code MVP. So give us like a little brief rundown of like what it is exactly. You can talk about the consumer side, but then also the business side too, if you want.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I've always been a big user of Product Hunt, and at one point I found a website builder tool called Card, which is made by a mysterious developer guy on Twitter called AJ, and he created like this really simple tool to build websites, and I just fell in love with it. I reached out to AJ like, hey, I think this is really, really cool. And then later I found out that he made like a lot of WordPress themes that I used in the past for like other websites or projects that I tried. So that was a fun meetup, like finding a tool that I really liked that was built by a guy that I apparently knew through his products that I used before. So I adopted Card as like my go-to website builder, and then AJ built it out over time with integrations with Zapier, Stripe, etc. And then when I started digging into Zapier, which is like three years ago or something, my mind was really blown, because I could now connect a static website to an automation tool, Zapier, and then do anything I want with all the integrations that Zapier has. And that's kind of where the idea for this course came from, because in that time I was also working with a lot of startups, also working with innovation teams in like corporate companies. And what I saw is that a lot of people overvalued their ideas, and they started building like huge products and mobile apps immediately, only to end up on a dead end where nobody was waiting for what they've built. And so that's kind of like those two things combined is kind of where the idea for this this course came from.
That's awesome. That's definitely one thing too. Two things actually. With Card, I'm also a really big fan of Card. Like, I love Card. I've actually, like, with the podcast, other like site builders have offered to let me use their stuff for free, and I tell them no, because I'm so like loyal to AJ and Card. But so what you were saying about like building out these huge products, that is definitely one thing I noticed too. It's like whenever you're talking to these teams, it's like they're trying to raise money, like buku bucks, just to build the MVP without any legitimate customer validation. And what I've talked to investors about is, you shouldn't be raising money to validate your idea. You should be raising money to scale it. So.
Yeah, no, totally right. And I've even sat down with people that were like, can you intro me to investors? I'm raising money. And then I asked them, so, okay, can you show me what you've built? And then they're like, no, I'm raising money to build my first product. And then, I just walk out of those type of meetings, because I'm just like, okay, well, I don't even know what you're trying to do here. But yeah, I think I'm a real, I don't want to say extremist, but really convinced that as a starting team or a starting entrepreneur, you have to do all this stuff by yourself in order to figure out, I have this idea. Most ideas are, by the way, always about a solution, not so much about a problem, right? So in a solution, there's already a lot of assumptions that which problem you're solving, who's experiencing that problem, and how that problem should actually be solved. But you have to find that evidence first that you really should build that type of solution, right? Same for when people say, I'm building an app. My question is always, why is it an app? Creating an app, iOS or Android application is already a super huge choice, and maybe not the best one to start with.
Yeah. Especially because building an app is no simple task.
No, and it's really expensive too. And the same. I think I tweeted about this before. Like, let's say you're a non-technical founder and you think you need technical help from someone, say a technical person to join you in your startup journey, or a development agency that would build your first product. I always say, like, okay, one, how are you going to pitch that technical person? Why in the world would that person join you? Like, what's the evidence that you will use to convince this person that they should join you and build your first product? And to gather this evidence, you don't have to be technical. You just have to do a lot of work. And the same goes for when you want to brief a development agency. Like, what are you going to brief them? What is your app going to look like? What are the functions? What should the text say? What should the logo look like? Like, all these things. That you have to investigate that by yourself before you can really brief other people that can help you build your thing. And that way you can also really own what's eventually going to be built, especially when you hire a development agency that's going to build a product for you you want to